PGA, Podcast Growth Academy. Monetize your podcast with these 3 steps. Thank you for joining. I got to say one more time because I got an emoji next to me. So I got to make sure the emoji also has a sound. So PGA, monetize your podcast with these 3 steps. That's what we're talking about today. We're talking about monetization today. So you're welcome to the Podcast Growth Academy. Thank you for being here. Thank you for listening. This is another audio experience that you're going to enjoy. Every day, I am putting out content for you from Monday through Friday for an hour so you can learn how to monetize your podcast, how to start your podcast, how to build a podcast for your business, and more importantly, how to start doing this for yourself. So this is going to be another room with so much impactful information that you would love to be in and you'd love to be a part of, because you start to think about your business from the perspective of who is listening, why they're listening, and where they're listening from. There's so many things you can cover from just getting insight from what you do, and that's a good way of you understanding that, hey, I'm doing this for a reason. I'm creating content for a reason. If somebody's listening to my information or listening to my content, then I have to let it buffer. I'll give you an example. I know you're listening to this podcast, this episode. I know you're enjoying the episodes because I see you guys listening, and I appreciate you for listening, because you could be anywhere else but you're here. So I really appreciate that. Listening to this episode and looking at how the episodes are also rolling into the podcast, I'm noticing that a lot of you are listening and you're enjoying the content. You're coming back to me later for more. You're telling me what's insightful. You jump from this episode, you go to another episode. Like the episode I talked about revenue generating activities for podcasters, paid versus owned versus earned media, everything you need to start monetize and scale a podcast. Those are episodes that I dropped, last month. So if you listen to those episodes too, they're pretty much an hour, 2 hours long. So it depends on how you want to listen to it. But at the end of the day, you have to figure out, okay, how does monetization even begin? So let me give you a quick high level standpoint and then come down. To monetize your podcast, you need to focus on 3 things, right? I know monetizing branding, there's going to be so much conversation about that. Yes. But it boils down to 3 major things. The first thing is considering to monetize your pre-roll. The next thing that you want to monetize is your mid-roll. And the third thing that you want to monetize is your post-roll. Now, those 3 rolls are different. When you think about a pre-roll, a mid-roll, and a post-roll, I want to explain what these things are, because you're in the academy and you're here to learn, you're here to listen, you're here to understand concepts, and you're here to take notes, right? So a pre-roll is another way of saying, what are you going to put before the ad is completed and a new episode begins? So if I have a pre-roll ad, it means that for 30 seconds, for 15 seconds, for 45 seconds, an advertiser was being listened to or being watched as a commercial before you started to listen to the episode that you're interested in. Because if you like an episode, you're going to click on it because you like what you see. You read the episode, you're like, "Ooh, this sounds good." I click on it, and now I'm listening to the episode. So now I feel like I'm fulfilled, because one major thing that a lot of us don't look at is fulfilling the consumer before they're even filled. I'll say that again. You need to fulfill the consumer before they even get filled. How do you do that? How you fulfill a consumer is by supplying the information that they need, by giving them that information for them to read. So when they read what they need, then they'll plant that seed, and then they'll opt into your page because they feel like now you have something to show them. Now you have something to talk about. Now you're on the same page. So you have to give them information that they can feel fulfilled, because the title of that podcast episode The title of that article, the title of that book, the title of those pages that you have are all going to contribute into the success of building into your business. So when you're monetizing your podcast, you have to think about these three steps. You have to think about the pre-roll, you have to think about the mid-roll, and you have to think about the post-roll, right? So the pre-roll is right before the episode starts. The mid roll is right in the middle of the episode. So you're listening to a 30-minute episode, somewhere within the 13th, 14th, 15th minute, you just hear from nowhere an ad just blocks right in. Like you're literally listening, you're glued to the conversation. You're already like dedicated to listening because you've got into the meat and potatoes of the episode, right? It's like getting to the very piece of the movie that actually makes the movie, right? So they're listening to your episode, they're listening to your show, they're listening to your story. And then midpoint or mid sentence, you just hear, oh, we got an ad going on here. So imagine talking and telling people, hey, I love what we're talking about with, marketing your podcast and building your podcast, and then you're monetizing it at the same time. And here's a little show why it even happened in the first place. And then all of a sudden, you're getting into a whole new space, and now that rewinds you back into a mid roll. And before you know it, you're already like pretty much hooked in. So you're creating content for people to see because that content now is something that they're actually connecting with daily, right? So that connection that they're making with you is the beginning of building consistency and branding because that mid roll happens right in the middle of your role, in the middle of your episode. Like I'm listening to you mid sentence, boom, I get hit with an ad. Now, the potential of someone actually listening to that ad and feeling like that ad is actually expressive to them and they feel like they're actually welcome is the beginning of something completely new because now you're monetizing that platform, you're monetizing that episode with that 30-second clip that somebody paid you, a couple bucks for, or $100 for, $1,000 for, depending on how you're, monetizing your show. But you have to start from somewhere, right? And the best place to start is with your episodes because it's your intellectual property, it's your business, it's your time, it's your value, and it's your sound. So these are things you have to start considering as a business because you're not just looking at your business for growth sake or you're looking at it because I want to make money. You're looking at it because I want to leave a legacy for my children. I want to leave a legacy for my future. I want to leave a legacy for my life. Like when I leave, what can people check out and see that I did that made sense, that actually helped someone's life for better, right? And if you can't pick that up or say, oh, I got it on my social media, great. What if 10 years from now that social media platform is no longer a platform to be used? What can you say? What did you leave? How do you leave your stuff online? All these great people that we have in life, they all come and go. But if you go and you leave something behind, then you're going to leave something impactful that's going to help you monetize your life, literally, because now you have assets, you have resources. That's why normally when I tell people when you're joining the academy, or if you're joining as we're working with you as a client, I always make sure that you have your work email address because at any point in time, you may want to sell your business. You may want to merge. You might have an angel investor. You might have something happening and they need your email. If you give them a gmail.com email, that's going to be scary because they'll be like, I don't know if you're really in business. So you have to position yourself so that when you're in business, you have to look like a business. So that business etiquette has to start from how are you showing up as a business and why are you showing up as a business? Is there a reason why you're showing up? Yes. Okay, explain it to me. And then that way it actually builds into your whole, ecosystem and allows you to connect the dots at a faster rate. So you have to think about how people are connecting with you and where you're placing those connections in your episodes, right? So there's a pre-roll, that's one step. There's a mid-roll, that's the second step. And then there's the post roll, which is the last step. A lot of people don't look at the post roll because I don't know why. It's like the low hanging fruit of monetization for podcasting. Because if you leave something juicy at the end of the conversation, guess what? People always like to scrub to the end. that is a natural thing. So if people like to scrub all the way to the end, how about they scrub all the way to the end and then they hear you for 10 seconds talking about how they can connect with you, right? So you have to think about your business from the standpoint of, I want to grow. I want to learn how to monetize my podcast. I've never had a chance to even do it, but I have the opportunity to try. And if you try and it works, you're going to try again. If it doesn't work, you're going to try something else, right? Monetization should not be your first thought in mind for podcasting. Storytelling and building awareness with a community in mind should be your first thought of action, because that monetization comes after the people come in. You can't sell to air, right? You have to have people around you that are breathing the same air that you can connect with. That way, you're also in sync because everything is a collective. You can't just be doing things outside. So you have to build it from within so that people from outside can see what's going on inside. So I'm going to pause there real quick. And I wanted to welcome Soda, Julie, and Dragon. Thank you for being here. Tara, I see you. Thanks for being here again. Shotaro, Anuchit, G, and Kaja, Monica, thank you so much for being here. Soda, I saw you came up first. How are you? Good morning. Happy Friday.
Good morning. And oh my gosh, I love what you said about legacy and what they have when, if something happens to you. And also like for me, so my in-laws are from Laos. And fun fact, in Laos, they didn't start having last names until a couple generations ago, about maybe 100 years ago. So there's only about 50 people in the world with my last name. And I'm the first, if you type in the last name, I'm the first person that comes up. And I think about, representation and how I represent myself and, just this idea of um like when someone looks you up, whether it's you represent yourself, you represent your family, you represent a community, and that importance of having that out there. And so it just got me a lot to think about. And what you were talking about, professionalism, having, a business email, having taking pride in what you have. And we're doing like a pitch practicing yesterday and I couldn't do it. I was just like the and that importance of having pride in what you do and having that pitch ready. And so yeah, just it got me really thinking a lot, so I appreciate you.
Thank you, Soda. I appreciate you too. Yeah, definitely, that pitching and the perfecting and the practicing, it all makes perfect sense, when you look at the long-term effect. Because you look at your first episode, you look at your 10th episode, you look at your 100th episode, you're going to see a huge difference because of that first episode. So I always tell people, just go ahead, try. Just even if you don't know what you're about to say, just say it, because one day someone's going to be like, wow, this person tried it. They tried it with boldness, with courage, even though they felt like they were not going to do it, but they did. And here we are 5 years later, 10 years later, excited about why we started. So when we look back on why we start some things and we're happy for why we started, then it all comes back together because the why is going to be more important than the how, if you really look at it from a level to level perspective, because how can be done collectively, but the why has to be done internally. So that way, whatever you have from within you is also now portrayed as a beacon of light from outside. So I really appreciate you as well, Soda, for that. Julie, good morning.
Hi there. I am just trying to get everyone up here to come and chat with us. John's here. I just saw Amanda. Oh, I don't know where Sonia went. What was the question? I want to say hello to everybody. I love this topic, monetize your podcast with these 3 steps. Can't wait to hear. I'm always trying to build these communities and understand how to do it better. So let's do this.
Thank you, Julie. I was thinking about the 3 steps, the pre-roll, the mid-roll, and the post-roll. And it sounds very basic, but there's so many things that can go behind it and through it. So if you're listening to a podcast and you're connecting with people, and let's say there's monetization in the way, how would you position it your way for your show that makes the most sense for your
with
audience.
the, with the pre-roll, post-roll, mid-roll.
Yeah.
I think there's not a lot of um, there's not a lot of listenership in the mid-roll and post-roll. Yeah, if you bake it in correctly and it makes it seem part of the show, it's amazing. But I think the money game is on the pre-roll. Get them before they even start listening to your content. Advertisers love that, and make it seem like it's part of the podcast. Like, I just did one for Orlo Nutrition, and I was like, okay, guys, before I start the show, I just want to tell you about I've had a lack of energy. Da 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 da. These omega 3s are amazing. Blah 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 blah. And then it kind of like seamlessly builds into the show, and I can use it over and over again. So the money game is with the pre-roll, in my opinion. Thank you. And hello, everybody. I see a lot of friends here. Happy to see you guys all.
Thank you, Julie. Yes, thank you. I appreciate you. It's good to see you as well, Lois and John Dragon as well. Thanks for being here. I appreciate you. Amanda as well is here. Dr. Shari is here. Thank you all for being here. Good morning. Yes, Julie, pre-roll is definitely the way. And I think about it like TV, prime news, Super Bowl. I mean, that's kind of mid-roll. But if you look at the post and you look at the pre, most times you get everybody at the top of the funnel. And that's where you want to start at the top. Everybody can see the shore, but not everyone can see the bottom of the ocean. So if you catch everyone at the top, and whoever listens to you at the top catches, it takes flight, and then you're able to have that filtered audience as you go down. So I would do it in a pre-roll too, just because it attracts the audience and it keeps them in check, so that whatever the conversation we're having before the actual conversation we need to have, we've already completed that. It's not in the way, and people can connect with you. But at the same time, you can have that mid-roll that can stop people midway, and they'll be like, oh, okay, now I know what you're saying, because I'm so glued to the conversation. It makes sense because of the brand. So it could also go contextually in a different way if you're putting it
And
out, within that
get
format.
them at that like moment where it's a cliffhanger. And I'm going to tell you who murdered JC Dornick in just a second. And then you just do the mid roll between, right between that, like where people need to hear the next iteration of your podcast. So thank you. Who murdered
Exactly.
Dragon?
Dragon. What's up, Dragon? Good morning. Thanks for being here, man.
That's a pretty dark thought that just ran through
That
your
was
brain there,
it
my
was so
friend.
random. Does it
Like, I
mean
know you were
something?
just using me as an example, but I
I
mean, like
was
you
gonna
I'm so
say,
dark.
you actually you actually just thought of
It
that.
must be on top of
I'm gonna
mind. I don't know.
if
That's so weird.
if John was still an active officer, I would have him, start investigating
I
anything
would
you
have
put
him
there.
start with her backyard.
I will, first of all, Favor this. It's so cool that you're having this discussion. Um, I think that the best discussion, well, I shouldn't say that, because if I was in the phase where I wanted to create a podcast, I would want to be in a room that was talking about that. But for people that are in any way, shape, or form doing podcasts or creating them, I think that this is a topic that is always avoided, is how to monetize. There's this idea that I'll build it and then they will come and then I'll figure it out along the way. And I did that with my first show as well, so I understand it. So I just want to thank you for creating space to talk about something that people avoid very often, and that is making money. As a podcaster, we get so caught up in our passion and our message that we end up giving it away for free. I know none of you give anything away for free here. I'm not talking about you, of course, but you know what I'm saying. Wink, wink, everybody. Um, so anyway, what I always do, rather than an opinion about something like this, like pre-roll, mid-roll, um, I just go follow podcasts, from extremely successfully monetized podcasts to ones that are starting to, ones that are in the process. And I just look at what they're doing rather than recreating the wheel, because I find that my biggest mistakes happen when I start thinking too much about what would be a good idea. So that's the way I do it. So you'll take I'm going to just use as an example one of my favorite podcasts that I look at is Andrew Huberman's. It's called the Huberman Lab. I don't know if anybody's a fan of that. Just really cool. So his monetization is, you know, typically product oriented, you know, and it's associated with like these greens drinks that make you smarter and things like that. So he always does a pre-roll, and I understand why. I'm going to be honest with you. I will typically skip that because I'm used to when you listen to a podcast all the time, you know you'll tend to skip it. But he also does a mid-roll. So what my answer to that question, where is it best? I would say I think it's best to do it in both, right? Because you don't really know if you don't know what is best, then make sure you're there when it does make sense for somebody. But my rationale, I think you just said it, Favor. My rationale of where to put advertising um, is in a place where it's more validated. You said something to that extent. So let me give you an example. If I'm talking about in the Huberman Lab concept, if I'm talking about the idea of enhancing my brain power, or like maybe Jim Quick is doing something like that, um, and somebody's in that mode, and then I go to an advertisement of a product that, you know, helps you execute on that, like you said before, it's going to make more sense. But you know, one of the things that my favorite way to monetize though is on the post. You know, like where I always looked at, because I'm working with John right now and Julie as well, and you know, John's doing some you know spectacular stuff for us, you know, as far as, you know, getting us to this point where we can monetize a lot of the aspects of our podcast. But I still, even when I get to that point, I look at my podcast as a portal of entry into, I hate the word, but my funnel. Where is it leading people to? So that's my favorite element right now. Most of my monetization comes on the post right after the podcast, whether it's leading people to wanting to work with me or leading people into a free community. Like Julie and I are creating a free community, whether it's the big idea, our networking community, or a free school community of sorts, um, that leads to something that we're monetizing. So if you look at the perspective of the listener of the podcast, you know, follower and listener, you're building a relationship with them. You're building trust. So, you know, if somebody hears an episode and they love it and they kind of feel like they want more, it's a great time to lead them somewhere, some sort of an action step where they'll get what they're looking for and then probably be in a better place to want to do business. So that's it. You know, I'm all about relationships, cultivating trust, following up, following through before business is done.
Oh, I love that. I love that, Dragon. Thank you for that insight. And you're right, because podcasting is one of the most evergreen ways of doing advertising in 2024 and beyond, because it focuses on voice, impact, engagement, and community, which is what we all want to build online. And if we're building it from a central point, a focal point, which is our website, and springing forward to third-party sites, then it gives us leverage to be able to pretty much leverage domain authority, because if you have a podcast episode, people are listening to it, you're building your brand, you're monetizing your brand. Sometimes people don't know, am I going to monetize all my episodes? Is it just going to be one episode? Is it going to be one season? There's so many intricacies between those pointers to look at and see, where am I going to really put my show? How am I going to put my show? And even the titles of your show also attract, you know, the conversion value of the advertiser or the podcast monetization for your show. Because if you have topics that are resonating with people, you know, we talked about zip code advertising and zip code marketing last week. Those places that actually attract those audiences, that if you're running an episode and you know, in this city, in this area, in this zip code, in this county, people are driving 10 minutes to work, 30 minutes to work, you're doing an advertisement, your podcast, people are acting on those advertising, you know, campaigns in real time if they're driving, and you have an episode released at 8 a.m. and you know that people go to work, you know, before 8 a.m. and then by the time they get to work, they have 15 minutes to listen to something before they settle down. You have to kind of do that consumer behavior analysis so that by the time your podcast is also going out for monetization, you're not just monetizing cash wise, but you're also monetizing value wise, because that expense you're giving, to your podcast, you don't know who's listening, but how they're listening and when they're listening also impacts the conversion value of your podcast long term. So it also affects the bottom line, in its sense. So thank you so much for that, Dragon. Welcome, Carrie and Amanda. John, would love to hear from you. What are your thoughts on the conversation so far?
I think they're great, and people should look at all the different things that are going on with ways they monetize their show. And pre rolls, mid rolls, post rolls, they're all good. The problem is, if it's not your ad, you are oftentimes making a pittance per thousand. So I do that. And with Triton, my back end, I can put my own up there for next to nothing. It's like $30 per account and then 25 cents per thousand. So it works out great. But it's usually enough to help with the bills. Having said that, my chief thing I would tell people is what I see a lot of podcasters don't do is they don't create spots where they advertise their own stuff, their social media, their email newsletter, their websites, all those things as a way to drive traffic and to establish more lines of communication with potential consumers, potential leads, potential customers. So start sponsoring your own stuff. And secondly, the benefit of that is when you have that in place. For example, how many, I know Julie has Newsbreak and a couple of people do as well. Carrie does too. How many people have, and you don't have to answer this, how many people have spots in their show that promote their Clubhouse rooms? How many people have spots in their show that promotes their Newsbreak, which they can make money off of? How many people have spots that produce their Facebook, which they can make money off of? The vast majority don't. But the added value is once you have those spots, you automatically have a place to start putting spots when paid advertisers come on board. And they're baked in, and you can include in the show notes, all that stuff. So that's something that's a missed opportunity for the vast majority of podcasters, I say. And instead of thinking about how do I create good content and then monetize that content, they focus solely on how do I create better content without the monetization piece. And that's why so many people go into pod fade, if you ask me. That's just my 2 cents worth.
Thank you so much, John. I like that word pod fade. It's I like the coined word for that. That's nice. Because you mentioned something that really caught my attention, especially when it comes to the monetization piece of your own show within your own social channel. Because whenever you I'm just going straight into SEO with this. Whenever you set up your podcast, even before you launch an episode, you have to go to the settings, and the settings will tell you what's the name of your show, or who's the author, what are your social links. They're going to generate your RSS feed when you connect once you release your first episode, you have an enabled RSS feed. You're going to authenticate it with an email address that's going to be coined to your or tied to your RSS feed, and then you have your social links on the back end. Now, all those things sometimes are missed opportunities, like John is saying, because if you don't have those there, anytime your RSS feed is now pulled into another platform like Podchaser, or pulled into iHeart, or pulled into Apple, wherever your podcast goes, your links follow with those links. Your links follow within that sitemap. So if you're missing out on those opportunities too, on the technical SEO standpoint, when you're now pointing them to your website, you're also losing out on traffic, because if you want people to watch you on YouTube, check you out on Apple, but your website is missing from your actual domain, then there's a problem. Because when you look at validating your RSS feed, which I'm going to bring to you guys next week, when you validate your RSS feed, it's pretty much like a technical SEO audit, because when they ask you what is the name of your website associated with your podcast, sometimes some people leave that blank. And maybe because they don't have a website. If you have a domain, I'd just say leave your domain there. Even if it's not active, at least have it there, and maybe have it like under construction, something to show them that you're in business, you're active. So if you miss out on those opportunities on putting your website, your social links, into your show notes, into your news feeds, into your spaces, even vocal wise, it's gonna like you're missing out on so much opportunity. Like John said, even now with Apple, people that listen to Apple Podcasts, under the section that says episode transcript, if you verbalize your URL and say, like, for me, we don't play podcast.com, and it's on the podcast, that URL is automatically highlighted and it's triggered by the algorithm, so it turns purple. So if someone's reading your transcript like they're reading lyrics, right, and they're reading your transcript on podcast, and you talk about your own stuff, hey, check me out on facebook.com/, da 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 da, you're literally saying those things like John is saying, and it's being encrypted into your podcast vocally. So that means you have something called a share of voice when people are searching for your podcast through Siri, through Alexa. So if you think of the bigger picture and focus on building your house first, having an intellectual property with your house in order, then you can invite guests to your house because you know everything in the rooms have been secured. So you have to put your house in order before people visit your house. So thank you so much, John, for that input. Lois, thanks for being here. We want to pass it to you. Pre-roll, mid-roll, post-roll. What do you think about monetization?
Okay. First of all, when you guys were talking pre roll, I thought you were talking about cannabis. All right. Secondly, I don't know anything about any of those things. That's why I'm here to listen.
Oh my God, Lois. How come no one else
Wow.
just was like, what the what?
So listen, I'm here to listen while I brush my teeth, take a tub, got to go to an appointment. I'm all ears.
Lois, we love you. That's a perfect segue. You
I
see,
mean, pre-roll. Come on here.
that's a mid-roll right there. If there was a
Yeah, that's a mid-roll.
that's what's up. Thank you, Lois. Appreciate you so much for being here. Amanda, what you thinking?
She's thinking like, what is Lois thinking that pre-roll is cannabis?
I'm cracking up. I love Lois so much. um, as far as what's better than the other, I I don't really. I like to. For me, if I was, looking for a spot in somebody else's podcast, for me, I would want the listeners to hear what I'm putting down in the very beginning because you don't know where they're going to go, if they're going to finish listening. And I know I've heard before that like mid-roll is the most sought out portion of the podcast to put. But for me, I like the beginning. I think you're going to have everyone's attention because it's usually the first 5 minutes of the episode. So, yeah. Good morning, everyone.
Thank you, Amanda, and good morning to you too. I appreciate that feedback because in the beginning you want to catch them early because they may not listen to that full 30 minutes. They might get something might happen. They might get a phone call. They don't come back to that episode till maybe next month. Something could happen along the way. But if you catch them early, yeah, you'll definitely be able to let them know what they're doing with their business so that you can actually get them through the front door. Lois.
Can I wasn't kidding when I really thought that that's what you were talking about. Could you just explain to me what those three things are again? And for anybody in the listening lounge who may be just a hair into this.
Thank you, Lois. Yes, contextually pre-roll. So for pre-roll, a pre-roll is typically a slot that is placed on, I can call it a machine, and the machine is an episode of the podcast. And somebody slots in an audio bit, like when you listen to radio right before, the show that you want to listen to, or right before you want to watch the news.
Gotcha.
Yeah, there you go. So with that pre-roll, people do them within different time sequences. There's 15 seconds, 30 seconds, 45 seconds. So the longer the number of seconds, the longer the person has, the more the person has to pay. That's the advertiser. So that CPM also comes into play. So if you're having an episode that's, let's say, 15 seconds, then that 15 seconds that you're playing as a pre-roll before the show starts, if you know that, okay, my watch time people drop off at the 7th minute, then it also allows me to calculate where I should actually place that episode or that slot, within the pre-roll. And sometimes a pre-roll can be right before an episode starts, and it could be right after the episode starts, and then right before the actual conversation begins. So I don't think there are really rules to it, but a pre-roll is pretty much like, I can say, the act one, the first, like a third of the episode, if I can put it like that. Then the two-thirds is now where you have the mid-roll, where you can have a conversation, and then it just says, hey, we'll be right back after the short break, and then boom, you have something that people can talk about for 30 seconds, the same sequences. or anything without, within that line. And then post roll is the same way. I kind of feel like a post roll is a double post roll, especially if it's an interview style, because at the end of a podcast show, as an interview with someone that you're interviewing, you're going to ask them, hey, how can people connect with you, right? That's one post roll on their end. And then after the show is over, you have another post roll for your show. So that's like a double whammy. So if you can create those two and then link them together internally, then that post roll can really give you a lot of edge. When people are trying to get to know the next episode, you can use that as a sequence to say, hey, in the next episode, this is what's going to happen. Because I remember when I used to watch Power, they would always, give, and like any other series, they'll tell you what's coming, and then you have to wait for a whole week, before you get the next episode. So kind of leaving that cliffhanger also keeps people within that suspense because you want to build it around your show. Does that help, Lois?
110%.
Thank you. Thank you for that question. I know a lot of people definitely may not have known that too. So it's really great to get that information. And thank you, Lois, for that question. Carrie, thanks for being here. We'd love to hear your thoughts on the conversation.
Hi, Favor. Hi, everyone. So I'm just thinking about monetization and having a podcast. I've been in photography for a long, long time, and it's pretty interesting to see how I'm getting my clients lately. So I just put up a Mother's Day promotion. And for me, I want young moms. I'm an older mom now. My daughter's almost 21. So I've got to get the next tier of young families. And what I find interesting is that the people that have responded to my promotion are divorced young moms, or responding to the Shot at Love live event that I had. So I think the podcast is an amazing way to market, and it's about getting in front of people. And I know from being shut down for so long during COVID how much damage that did, because out of sight, out of mind. And you've got to be in the community to keep a thriving business. So I just find it so fascinating that I'm helping people find love, but it's supporting my business at the same time. That doesn't have to do with anything about online dating, which is kind of interesting. So that's my share, and I really
Universe is great like that, isn't it, Carrie?
it is.
No, I love it, Carrie. I'm just thinking now for you, especially on the monetization front, it's a different, it's I would call it disruptive because you're doing it differently, it's not conventionally done, but you're doing it in a way that is also attracting a lot of, attention, and it's also pretty much surpassing the podcast realm, if I can use that word. And you're giving people an audience for them to even experience you as a brand before they even work with you as a business. So that's also giving you that elevation and allowing people to connect with you faster than it would be if you didn't have a podcast. Now, I'm wondering, Carrie, if you didn't have a podcast show, would you still get the same type of magnitude of results or that kind of quality or feedback?
I mean, I haven't been in business all these years as a single mom without banging down doors to get people to come to my studio. I mean, so I would have figured it out. It probably would be more challenging. I'd have to do maybe some free events or something. But yeah, it's really interesting. I mean, I think what I'm doing with the live event and with the podcast is I'm showing young moms or women that look at I'm putting myself out there, and I'm trying in an unconventional way, and I think people really respond to that. Whether I fail or succeed, it's like I don't care anymore. I just I'm gonna try something because I'm passionate about it. And I think a lot of times people hold themselves back. And I'm firing on all cylinders now at 51.
No, I love that, Carrie. I love that. And it's a great thing you're doing too, because years from now, the episodes you have will still be listened to. People will still jump in, they'll tap in, grandkids will listen to it. Some people may even use it as school projects to do citations for their exams. Like the way it's going, even in the educational system, back then we used to use textbooks and go to listen to this show or swipe this file. But now, people are going into school, podcasts, go listen to this episode and then tell me about about it. So it's also adding value to the community at whatever stretch. And it may not even end up in a school. It may end up somewhere next to it where someone can listen to your show, and just because they love your voice, just because they love your titles, just because they love the cover art, they love the color, it plays a big role into, that framework. And it also shows that how you also portray yourself out there, with your podcast, shows how you handle business too when you have conversations with people. So people listen to those things without even realizing it, but it's a way of also kind of displaying how you do business without even being in business when you're talking on a podcast show. Like for my show, for example, we say that it's because it's called We Don't Play. I normally say to people that either they ask, "Hey, is there any questions you have for me?" Or, on the podcast show, I'm like, just be yourself, because for us, it's very fluent, it's very natural, it's definitely unscripted, and it's detailed with experienced listening for all ages interested in entertainment and creative fields. So if you're listening and you're paying attention to the conversation, you will love to hear something and it just resonates with you, and then it picks you up and you're able to go. So if we're monetizing even with our podcast, right. Our podcast is pretty much the space that people listen to. Like they come there, they listen to you on that podcast. And it's hard for you to know where they listen to your podcast. I mean, it's easy to tell when you go to your analytics, but you can't decide where someone's going to listen to you. You don't know if they have an iPhone, you don't know if they have a Samsung, you don't know if they have an iPad, you don't know if they have YouTube TV, you don't know if they have you don't know those things. You don't really know. You may know, but you don't fully know. So if you're creating content and you're also building into those systems, also think about the experiences that people are going to have, not just from a phone, but from a laptop, from a desktop. What's the sound like? Are people able to turn up the volume? Is your audio loud? Are there sound effects? Is there music in the background? All those things also add value to your business. Now, I want to throw this question in the room. If you add music to an ad, and let me put it this way, competitor A has no music on their ad, competitor B has music on their ad, what would you say the conversion value would be between those two based on the music background and the feeling psychologically?
I'd love to jump in on this. So the first rule is never use copyrighted music. Never, ever, 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 ever with commercials. What the bed music does is it creates a flow and it creates an emotional feel and it covers up a lot of the background noise. So people, well, there's two types of ads. You've got the host read ads, and this are embedded in your show, and then you have your pre-recorded audio spots that you put in certain sections of your show, and that will be something you want to put bed music in. Have I seen a huge difference? No, but in radio, we almost always do the voice and add the bed music because even though there's pauses, you've got the music playing in the background. So remember, it's about the feel and moving the person forward more so than making sure it's music you like. But the rule of thumb is make sure it's not copyrighted music. And no matter what people tell you, you can't use 10 seconds or less because they're going to nail you. They are going to nail you if you become successful, and they're going to come after you financially.
Ooh, yes, that's a big one. Thank you, John, for that disclaimer, because yeah, I think people kind of confuse royalty-free music, commercialized music, using music from YouTube, downloading it, maybe pitching it like a chipmunk, and then I don't know. People do crazy things these days, So I just feel like the best way to do it as a brand is to own your sound. You already own your voice, so why can't you own a sound? Create a sound, build into your sound, get someone to build a sound for you, so you don't have to worry about this, legal, allegations or cease and desist and things like that. You don't want to have all those things on you because you want to have a free, stress-free life. You want to live comfortably in peace, and you want to do things the right way for the right people, right? So at the end of the day, the music piece is there. I use music on my podcast, and some people don't even notice there's music on there. Someone said, I heard this episode, it was so touching, but I didn't hear any music. And I was like, what? The music is right there. So I went back to listen to it, and it's right there. But they don't even pay attention to the music because the conversation is so juicy that the music is pretty much like in the back burner. So if you kind of put it in a way that makes it feel comfortable, The sound, maybe you could put like nature sounds, depending on what your podcast is about. That music is going to create the mood. And then when you bring that mood to social media, people can feel it and then they can actually respond back to you. And that's where that monetization comes in, because there's a community that associates with that brand and that affinity. So it really builds into that framework of your business. Thanks for that, John. Anyone else wanted to contribute to the music piece?
Also, make sure that your music is good quality, because I had to take down all my audio files and re-upload them because I realized that music recording was not that great, and I learned that it is better to have no music than low quality music. So I'm going to throw that out there too.
Yeah, I agree that. I agree totally with that too. Yeah. If you have music, yeah, you can use it, let it be there, but it doesn't have to be in your face. It has to be really quiet, really quiet down, and people can really connect with you at a deeper level, especially if you have different songs, different moods, maybe different seasons have different sounds. You can play with it, however you want. It's your show, but the way you show up is how people are going to respond back to you. Now, another thing too, I know we talked about this in one of the other episodes, when it comes to podcast cover art and episode cover art, because people don't even know there's an episode cover art, because not every RSS feed or website can build into the episode cover art. Apple does. Great example. So I noticed something recently, because I was literally looking at my, in analytics today, just going through different sections, and I bumped into Podchaser. And I noticed that, they give you different categories. And I was looking at my different tags, because, podcasts also have tags. Those tags are not really seen from the back end, but if you connect them, if you claim your podcast on a platform that has tags, then that kind of tags you in. Just like if you're using Podmatch, for example, and you put tags there, people know who you are based on the tags that you have. So I looked at the tags for podcasting, and then I was wondering, okay, why am I showing up on this list? And then I clicked on advertising, and Podchaser is ranked, my podcast, We Don't Play, third place in the best advertising category section on Podchaser. So I did not know that till this morning, because I don't even go out there looking for these things. I just post away and I go. But years come on by, you're getting different things. I had to open my Podmatch today and respond to about 20 messages, because I've not been there since November 23. And so I'm so like out, but at the same time I'm in. But when you focus on what the people are saying and you want to come back to the roots, you have to kind of look at where you are as a business, and also understand that there are people out there listening to you. They're looking out for you. They're responding back to you. You read their messages saying, hey, I listened to this episode. It really touched me. It makes a lot of difference in someone's life when you have an episode that is touching, that actually changes their direction of thinking, and you're using podcast as a thought leader. If you're using podcasting as a thought leader, then you become a domain authority. It's an easy SEO hack, because the way things are going right now with AI, with technology, with tech in its full capacity, right? If you don't have your intellectual property in place as a business, it's going to be hard for you to thrive long term. Hey, Bianca, welcome. Good to see you sneaking up in the room. Thanks for being here. When you have a business and you're using podcasting to build it, you're doing a lot of things at the same time. I'll tell you the things that you're doing. The first thing that you're doing, if you're building your business with a podcast, and I'll talk about it more on Monday, because I have a room here scheduled for Monday. I'm here on Monday every day, Monday through Friday, the whole of May at 9 a.m. Central to 10 a.m. Central. I'm going to be talking about the importance of podcasting for business on Monday. So I'm going to give you a little snippet. Now, why it's really important for you to have a business with a podcast in 2024. Corporations are doing this. So why are you not doing this? And if you're doing this, how well are you doing this? If you're creating content for people, the name of your podcast episode, right, is going to be the URL of that same episode. But let me explain. If you have an episode and the name of the episode is Best Tips for Marketing Professionals in the Tech Industry, right? Whatever I just said is going to be automatically generated as a URL and as an actual link, because a URL stands for Uniform Resource Locator. So if I want to locate something, if I go to the library right now and I go to the section that says B, all the books that start with B, I'm going to find all of them there. BA, BB, BC, BD, BE. Then if I get to BZ, it's going to now be BAA, BAB, BAC. You get the point. So you have to create a filing system for your podcast so that when you create content and that title is seen by the consumer, you already have an SEO advantage because you did some keyword research that got you indexed in the first place. So when you're creating content, long term, evergreen, yes, you can change your title, but you may not be able to change that URL. You might do a 301 redirect, you might do all that technical stuff, but you don't even want to get there. You rather start properly than get there and then do it again. You want to save time. So you're creating content for people over time because you're building into a system that allows people to connect with you over time. So if you're creating a system that has programmatic workflows. You have an episode, you have a podcast, you have sponsors, you have you're sponsoring your own show, like John said. You're telling people where to go, you're telling people what to do after the show. You're creating a system, you're creating a culture. Because some people just post an episode, hey, welcome to my episode, da, 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 they're done. That's it. That shouldn't be, because your episode is an experience. If I walk through your door and I have an experience and I walk through another door, I'll have another experience. But the door I'm going to go back to is the door that I had the best entrance through. So if I go through this door and I had an amazing entrance and the other one was not so good, I'm not going to go back to the not so good entrance because I didn't experience that entrance the way I should have. So if you're creating content for your podcast should be able to give you that result over time, because when you monetize eventually, you'll be able to go back and say, hey, I have these episodes. Which ones do you want a podcast to monetize? I have a whole playlist. We can create a playlist for my podcast and then put music into it so that they can also monetize the brand. So you have to think about different ways to monetize your podcast. And you also have to do it in different ways. I'll give you a little caveat because we have 5 more minutes and I have to tell you about what's going on the top of this link. Now, when you create content for your podcast, don't leave your and this is what a lot of people do for podcasting, and I really want you to try to think a little bit differently. Like, throw away the whole box. Don't even think outside the box. Throw away the whole box. you know just throw it out. Just be in your own space, be in your own bubble, be in your own like utopia, right? And think about the person that's going to listen to your episode, right? And when you think about that person listening to your episode, you're leaving an impression with that person about who you are based on the questions and based on the tone that you give, right? So if you create content and this content is going out to people, don't just leave your podcast on Apple or on Spotify. You don't own those platforms. You don't. Maybe you own your show on that platform, but you don't own the platform. You don't own the domain, right? So when you now do that, and you now submit your RSS feed to different platforms, what starts to happen is every time you hit publish to all those RSS feeds, because guess what? When you hit publish, it's not really published until all the RSS feeds have received and updated their own systems. Because every website has its own system. You might release an episode today, you may not get on Apple till maybe 2 hours from now. For other people, it might get on Spotify as soon as 10 seconds, right? So you have to see where your podcast is also going and how you're also creating content for your business long term. So monetizing starts off with focusing on your podcast, getting your podcast listened to, then people can subscribe to your podcast. Because if you tell someone, hey, subscribe to my podcast, they subscribe on Apple, great. You don't have their contact though. Apple does. You tell them to subscribe on Spotify, great. They do. Spotify has it, you don't. You tell them to subscribe on YouTube, great. YouTube has their contact information. You don't, because Google, you have to log in with Google or with your Gmail to access, a YouTube account that you can leave a comment on, right? Unless you're just doing incognito mode. But point is, anyone that's leaving a comment on YouTube has a contact email, address. So yes, you're getting a comment. This is good information. Yes, thank you so much for this. I love this content. Yeah, yeah, yeah. Go you. But if you don't have their contact and you're not talking to them directly through email, then you're missing out on so much. That's why the podcast you can monetize and tell people, hey, if you want more stuff like this, click the link above so you can join the podcast, enjoy the community, connect with us a little bit more so you're able to get our exclusive information and deals. Because if someone sends you an email, it means you're building a relationship with them, right? You have to build that relationship on the long term so that people can learn from you and they can now learn how to build with you. So if you don't build right now with your podcast, it can't go really far because those people that are subscribing to your podcast, you have their contact information. So guess what? You're creating new levels and new verticals for advertising. Not only are advertisers coming to sponsor your show, they're coming to sponsor your website, they're coming to sponsor your email list, they're coming to sponsor your social media, they're coming to sponsor all these platforms that they can actually see you on. And you can also add value to that by charging or billing them based on the criteria and based on the tiers or based on the assets that you have. So if you look at everything all together, you can really do well with your podcast if you just focus on community first, building your content, doing keyword research. And that's what we're going to do in the academy. In the academy, we get on a call together, we do your keyword research, we now find what are the topics people are discussing. We go into your actual niche, find out what they're discussing, and then we pull topics from there. So when we now add those links as URLs to the system, people are already searching for them within those filters. So you just add your link as a response to the market, right? You're not really doing rocket science. It's all about putting your information out there. People find you, then they connect with you. And if you've positioned yourself correctly with great presentation, then they can actually leave their contact information there. And before you know it, you'd walk into somebody's door, meaning you walk into someone's website, they love your content, they love what you're talking about, then boom, there's an email address for you to now leave in. You leave your contact information there. That's it until they unsubscribe. And if they do, then maybe they're not the people for you. But if they don't, they're going to be there forever. So think about monetizing not just from a show, a podcast, an episode, but think about it as a brand, as PR, as business, as community. And then that way you're able to build out your brand from there. Does anyone want to say anything or have any question or comment before I talk about the link above before we close?
Great information.
Thank you, Lois. I appreciate you. So before we wrap up, I wanted to let you guys know that the PGA, the Podcast Growth Academy, is available for you now. We launched out on Monday. It's been a great time since we picked this up, and like from April 15th to April 30th we had a beta access, and now from May 1st, that was on Wednesday, we now activated the Podcast Growth Academy now, so people are in and you can also be in there too. I am currently, literally before we started this today, I've already done some Spotify advertising for a client. He's done about 5 episodes, sorry, not five, I'm sorry, I lied. 12 episodes. I kind of did the number 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. He's done like 12 episodes, and now he's being listened to in 5 states in the US. So out of those 5 states in the US, now we're running ads on Spotify so I can be able to know which actual state listens to his content so we can double down on the budget and be able to now get him more listens and downloads for his show. So I've already gotten insights to know where his audience is before even running ads. So that's going to be one of those exciting things I'll tell you down the line when we talk. But if you want to join the academy, if you want to be part of this, click the link above, leave your contact information. It's going to redirect you to the page where you can see all the plans that we have available. We have monthly passes, we have annual passes, and we have a lifetime pass as well. You can choose any pass you have. If you want, please reach out to me if you have any questions. Click the links, connect with me on LinkedIn. Just reach out if you have any questions, any clarification. I'm here to help you because podcasting can start today. And if you do it correctly, you will always be someone to be listened to because you have a position in the market that you can actually fill as an authority. And I want to help you fill that spot as an authority. So if that's you, click the link above. There's so much insights there. I can't tell you everything because everything is in there. I can't speak on everything because I put it out on paper, I put it out on a document, and I've also put it out on screen. So if you have any questions, we can talk about it. And if you have any clarifications, we can also clear that out for you. But thank you so much for listening. Soda, Lois. Go ahead, Lois. Oh, Lois, your microphone is off now. Can you guys hear? Or is it just me? Okay, Lois, you might have to come out of the room and come back in. Sometimes the app does that. Sometimes. Okay. But hopefully she's back soon. But I hope you guys enjoyed this room and I hope you guys took some notes. The replays are on, so feel free to listen to replays. And I hope you guys enjoyed the conversation and get started with me so we can get started together. It's a great community. It's a different space. It's not a course. Let me tell you guys right now, it's not a course. It's an academy. Think about going to a school compared to doing a classroom assignment. There's a difference. So you have to think about the community you're in, and this is something that's being built as we go. And I'm excited for the people who are already in, the people who are coming in over the weekend, over the next week, over the next month. It's just going to be exciting, and that's why I'm on Clubhouse now. I wouldn't have been on Clubhouse if it wasn't for podcasting. I've said this before. I joined Clubhouse in 2020 because I was doing a podcast and I was doing it by myself, in 2019. And I was like, it would be good to have a podcast live instead of just having it by my microphone, with my Adobe. So that's why I decided to come on Clubhouse, and the rest is history. So I think just taking that bold step of faith and then walking towards your purpose is the best thing you can do for yourself and for your business. Hope you guys love that information. And I hope you guys also listen to the replay too. One more time, Lois, are you there? Wanted to give you a chance again. Hopefully that the microphone is good now.
I'm sorry. I'm trying to get back from behind the
Oh, there
scene.
you
I am here.
are.
Thank you so much. This was great information. Can you hear
Yeah,
me?
thank you so much. We can hear you now.
I think it was because I left a voicemail for somebody before. And sometimes when that happens, there's a glitch here and people can't hear you.
Right, right. That's true. Thank you, Lois. I appreciate that. Thank you all for being here as well. Tara, appreciate you for being here. She just left. Dr. Shari, Carlina, Anuchit, G, and Kaja. Thank you all for being here. Soda, Lois, Amanda, and Carrie, y'all are awesome. And I appreciate you. Hope you enjoy your weekend. Stay hydrated, stay warm. It's raining over here, but hope you guys also stay dry and stay hydrated. Thank you all so much for joining. God bless you and have a wonderful weekend. And I'll see you Monday, bright and early at 9 a.m. Central.